Well, the Riverhounds season started in Louisville back in July, and it ends in Louisville, unfortunately for them and their fans. 2-0 the final. Louisville City FC improves to 15-3 all time, if my notes are correct, in the USL Championship playoffs. And they've only lost one home playoff match, and that was last year's USL Championship final. So it was a tough task. It was a tall order for the Riverhounds, no matter how you want to put it, even though they finished just 1 point behind Louisville in the Eastern Conference standings with the way the playoffs were set up this year. They had to go on the road for the first round. And John Krysinsky, as you wrote, and by the way, I'm Matt Gajtka. This is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live, our final Riverhounds postgame of the abbreviated 2020 season as the Hounds are eliminated. John, as you wrote on PittsburghSoccerNow.com this week, it's the type of matchup that we thought we might see in the East final. And it ends up being in the first round just because of how the group set up and how the results played out. And the Hounds, I think, were found lacking in some key areas here tonight, but a difficult ask for them to go in there and do it again. So as it played out, not surprised, but I know a lot of folks out there who saw this team rack up the wins, the goals, the shutouts in the regular season are going to be disappointed by this result.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of people who are not happy with the result. This is year 3 for Bob Lilly. This is a Riverhounds club that is seasoned. You don't know how much longer Canardo Forbes or Steven Dos Santos are going to be able to sustain their level of play as they get into their 30s. And so the window, I think there's a window. There's a window there for some of those veteran players, and I have no doubt that Bob Lilly can retool and reload and have this organization in contention. But this particular group, it has to sting. It's going to be probably, I think, soccer rabbi Mark Goodman pointed out, it'd be a tough, long bus ride back from Louisville tonight, especially for those guys. They put their heart and soul into this organization, this franchise, getting it to where they've gotten it. But this year, I think there's definitely a feeling that they were glad they got the season in. They had a nice run, but towards the end of the regular season, some of the kinks started to show there, and also just lack of quality competition. Not playing. They played Louisville early in the season, and as I was telling you just before we went on, this is that team with that veteran type of team that they are, with having played 16 full games, they're not going to make those mistakes that they made in that opener. So the Hounds were not going to be able to press them into submission and force them to make mistakes. I would have been shocked to have seen that today. It needed to be one of these tight matches for Pittsburgh to have won today. It would have had to have been really tight. They would have had to, keep things pretty defensive and then look for an opportunistic goal. They had their opportunity early on. Dos Santos got behind the back line, got the ball off to Gajtka. Gajtka had an opportunity. You've got to take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves in a match like that against a quality side like Louisville City. And they couldn't get that, and I think it kind of spiraled from there. And Louisville City, on the other hand, took advantage of their moments. Bob Lilly talks all the time about coming up in those moments, and they, again, in the playoffs, they did it again.
Well, you said it. Albert Gajtka had a great look. Steven Dos Santos shortly after on a through ball from Robbie Mertz. That was about 12 or 13 minutes in. Just after I got finished writing in my notes that the Hounds hadn't generated much despite their control of the ball in the first 12 or 15. I thought they were all right there, but then Cameron Lancaster with a beautiful finish, unmarked at the top of the area, but still a beautiful finish there of the Oscar Jimenez cross in the 17th minute, and that one held up. Denny Video let in a soft goal at the end, but John, he gave him a chance to win because Lou City had plenty of breaks on the counterattack in that first half, and that's what concerned me in that first half, because I know Bob Lilly wanted his team to play, and I just talked to him post-match, and he said he was proud of the way his team went out there and did play. They didn't play scared or timid. They went at Louisville City, but when they didn't convert into a scoring chance, or they didn't get the ball far enough up the pitch and they turned it over, well, honestly, Lou City probably should have been leading 2 or 3-0 at the half. But Vitiello made a couple of nice stops, including one on former Hound Brian Ownby. Antoine Openo blew a 2-on-0 that they had, or a 2-on-1 counterattack late in the first half with a poor pass. So there were plenty of chances for Louisville out of like the 1 or 2 for the Hounds in the early going of that match. So that's what it came down to for me, John. I was concerned all year about this team's lack of ability to generate a quantity of opportunities. In the end tonight, just one shot on frame. That was the Dequa chance in the opening 12th minute or 13th minute. Other than that, they didn't get anything on target to challenge Ben Lunt. And they converted their chances at a historic rate in the regular season. They were up near 30%. No USL Championship team has done that in the OptaStats era, which dates back several years. But I was always concerned that it wasn't enough in terms of just playing the odds and playing the numbers game. That they couldn't get enough shots. They couldn't get enough shots through in the regular season for me to feel like they could go into a place like Louisville and actually, rack up a couple of goals or even a few like they have in some of their blowout wins this season.
Yeah, not enough quality pressure. We talk about shots, just getting that pressure from the width. Where was Jordan Dover and Ryan James tonight? I mean, there were some instances where Louisville City was kind of giving them the width, but they didn't really take it or use it or use it effectively. It seemed like every approach to the edge of the box just went, excuse me, it just didn't work out. I mean, they just couldn't get anything going in the final third. Excuse me. Sorry there. Needed a little bit of a hydration break here.
It is the year of the hydration break, so appropriate we squeeze one in here on our final show.
Yeah. But, just that final third, they could not solve. I mean, obviously, once Louisville City went up 1-0, that's a tough challenge, and they were defending very well. There was just really wasn't much there for the Hounds to create shot opportunities. But, stretch them out, use the width, do some different things, maybe create enough pressure to get corner kicks. And I think, I don't know what the final corner kick total was. I know it was 4-1 at the end of the half. I'm looking at it now. It was 6-2. I mean, so they only generated one more corner kick in the second half. There just wasn't enough pressure. It just didn't seem like, and the thing was, and you mentioned it, Bob was satisfied somewhat with the fact that they tried to play toe-to-toe with Louisville, but the problem with that, you try to play toe-to-toe, you open yourselves up, and that's what happened. They really should have been down 2-0 at the half, maybe even 3, just because they gave up so much space on the counter, and obviously got burnt a couple times, and the defending on the first goal wasn't very good. I mean, they were standing still. They were watching the paint dry, if you will. I mean, it was a little disappointing, knowing how well they played defensively, but that part of that was because they took chances. They tried to press. I mean, the second time Louisville should have scored in the first half, the Hounds were pressing really high, and you could just see the composure of Louisville playing the ball out of the back, just connecting passes. By the time they got to that 6th or 7th pass, it was a 2-0 against Vitiello. I mean, how Louisville City didn't convert on that one. It was a kind of a bad pass to Ownby. If that ball played to Ownby is right to his, right to his feet, it's a 2-0 game in the 40th minute. Excuse me.
That was my concern. That was my concern all year, really, John. Let's pivot to talk of the level of competition, because I had questions going into tonight. How good is this Hounds team? I'm not really sure because of how the unbalanced schedule worked out. And when the Hounds did play teams like St. Louis, like Louisville, like Indy, they didn't look nearly as dominant as you would expect as they did against the Philly Union 2s and the New York Red Bulls and the Loudoun Uniteds of the world. And so that was my concern. And that was why I felt like this was a true test of the quality of the team, like the playoffs usually are. But I'm glad it came here because it does provide some clarity on the season. I just felt like we needed to discount some of what the Hounds did this year because of the fact they only played 4 matches out of group and only won one of those, and that was against the Louisville team that gave them a lot in the season opener, as I think you alluded to earlier. That they weren't going to play like that tonight, Louisville City I'm talking about. They were, in a lot of ways, looking like the model of counterattacking soccer, the model of possession soccer. As a soccer fan, I love watching them play, even when they are dismantling the Hounds at times with their precision passing and the great timing that they have and the chemistry. They return double-digit players year after year, so it definitely shows. But in terms of the Hounds and how they came into this one, that's what I was concerned about. How would they handle a high level of competition, a higher level of competition than what they've seen throughout the rest of the year? Because all due respect to Hartford, I still think the Hounds were the better team in the group, and I think Hartford's maybe the 7th or 8th best team in the Eastern Conference, just based on what I've seen.
Yeah, the 2 losses to Indy really hurt. But again, that's showed where the Hounds were. They needed more games against teams like that. Those games were close, tight affairs, tense. Louisville, they beat them early, so they needed more of that a competition against quality side. I think would have helped them at least be battle tested for this moment. All this being said, in the 80th minute or so, even prior to that, Canardo Forbes lines up for a free kick. I mean, this is a thing that's about a Bob Lilly team, about this group of players. We've seen this. How many times have we seen this, Matt, where they haven't played their best, but somehow they find something. The thing is against Louisville City, it's going to have to be special, and they've had to convert on that. You get that free kick opportunity, and I believe it was like 78th minute or so, 77th minute or so. Yep. That you got to convert that. It wasn't a bad attempt by Canardo, but I don't know. It looked like they tried to do a quick restart initially, but then give him a chance to put it on frame, and he just missed it. I believe the commentators pointed out that Mertz was there near the back post. So Canardo went for it, and I don't blame him. I mean, you've got to get you're down 1-0 at that point in the match, but I mean, I think it's easy for the Hounds fans to be down on this team this year, but based on this result, based on the kind of way things finished with the Hartford loss, and then the way they finished up the last 3 weeks. But hey, I mean, this, as long as Bob Lilly comes back and you've got this, a lot of these quality players, I would feel pretty good about a lot of these guys coming back next year. Kind of unfinished business, wanting to play a 32 or 34 game schedule and get that opportunity to see how they could gel. As you said, see if they've given a chance to play a full season together with some of these pieces. I don't know about you. I questioned a little bit the Gajtka start, only because Mensah was effective in the first Louisville game, and even tonight I thought he looked good up top there. But you can't take Dos Santos out. Gajtka's run of form has been great, so it's easy to. I mean, it's so easy. I would never second guess Bob Lilly decision, but I just think about the way it was working, and having Gajtka come off the bench and be dangerous later in the match, as opposed to the way him starting the match, was something he hasn't done a lot this year. So that was my only thing that I might question in terms of the decisions tonight. But I thought otherwise the lineup was pretty solid. Like I said, I wasn't sure what happened. Dover just didn't seem like himself tonight. A couple of times out on the width, he had the ball in space, and there was one time, I think it was kind of probably midway through the second half. They had a nice possession. Mensah kept the ball. They kind of knocked it around. Then the ball went wide to Dover, and it just wasn't a quality ball. It just went over the end line.
Yeah, I do recall that chance. I think Dover was rusty. I still think Canardo Forbes wasn't at full strength either. I wonder how much he pushed to get back, because remember, initially we were told 4 to 8 weeks for that muscle tear in his leg, in his quad, which apparently stretched up to his hip too. So he didn't quite have that same jump, which is expected. So that was a shame, because I felt like something out of their control there with the injuries, obviously, with Dover, with Forbes. I also didn't think that Skylar Thomas and Ray Lee had great matches. I think the Hounds' back line was certainly less talented this year without Joe Greenspan, especially the USL Defender of the Year from 2019. Also, Toby Adewale, I liked his physicality think they were missing a little bit of that this year, but I feel like I'm also nitpicking, and that's where I keep coming back to here, John. And yeah, you can talk about Dikwa versus Mensah. I was okay with Dikwa because he's been good lately, but yeah, Mensah's had a nice season on the whole, a nice season of growth for a young player. Let's remember that too. But I keep coming back to the fact 16-game season, it was delayed for months. It's really an unfair setup for the scheduling in the regular season and the setup for the playoffs too. The seedings are kind of all thrown out the window because they wanted to minimize travel here, and that's what they did. So Pittsburgh traveled to Louisville as opposed to, say, a Charlotte or a Charleston, I should say, heading on to Louisville, which would have been the case in a normal seeding scenario in a normal season. But this wasn't a normal season. So I think I'm more inclined to lean to this was a building block season perspective right now, even in the immediate aftermath of them being eliminated. Perhaps I had already committed to that coming into this because I felt like it was going to be a long shot to beat Louisville at Louisville. But even so, even if I was going into this one absolutely confident, I still feel like with some of the young players like your Dikwas, Mensahs, Griffins, even you have guys like Dover and James aren't terribly old in terms of soccer, pro soccer. Thomas Van Gijzel, Danny Vitiello, Robbie Mertz continues to develop. I know you mentioned the closed window, but I think for me it's easier to say this is an in-between year, a year of growth and a year in which the team can make a step that maybe doesn't seem terribly tangible right now, but perhaps by this time next year we're talking about, well, they made some strides in 2020, got some young guys some playing time, and they're ready to go in 2021. So I think a lot of times it's tempting to just in the immediate aftermath of these things to just talk about what went wrong at the end, but I think a lot went right. And I think it's also easier to push forward to 2021 because of the nature of this season, how strange it was. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it was a very unique season. And like you said, I think I kind of agree with you in terms of what you're saying, in terms of this is kind of being a transitional season, if you will, being that, you still have a lot of core group of young players. One of the things I thought tonight was that going back to Bob talking about playing, you know, playing with, the three-man midfield. I mean, Canardo Forbes with two very young central midfield players at his side who are trying to push him and, push to be at that level. I do think that tonight was a tough match for Danny Griffin and Robbie Mertz in some respects. In that, their I mean, we'll never question their ability in terms of, their work rate, those type of things. It was absolutely out there tonight. They put it out there, and they're both attacking minded midfielders, central midfielders. And I think one of the elements that this team might have missed this year was that kind of that. And I'm not downplaying Mertz and Griffin's toughness. They absolutely are tough nails players, but they didn't have that. They didn't have that Mo Dabo type player. Maybe that's where Tony Walls would have come in. Maybe it is a holding midfielder, and maybe you do some things tactically different. Tony Walls never really got a chance to get going with this club, and if he signed on and he can use him next year, maybe that's an addition to the equation. So I'm just thinking about Bob. We both know this. Bob's already thinking about on the bus ride home tonight. I think he has his little board in his office, and he's going to start figuring out what his roster is going to look like, what he can do. I mean, obviously you got to figure out how can you beat Louisville City in a playoff situation, and I think one of the things that I constantly addressed with him this past 12 months really has been, what's your bench going to look like? What's your squad rotation? And I feel like he felt comfortable and he used his bench tonight. It just wasn't there. They're still missing some things, I think, and I think it's a midfield. I honestly believe I think it's a midfield issue, and I think there's something that they have to really look at how you use Canardo Forbes if you bring him back, and how Griffin and Mertz continue to develop. What type of tactics are you going to use playing, and see kind of Ryan James and Jordan Dover, if they come back, that element it's going to be interesting to see personnel wise, what they look like next year. And if they bring a lot of these guys back, I don't expect tactics to change too much. But like I said, I just think that maybe that midfielder that's just going to really do all the dirty work in terms of defensive or being good at pressuring people up high and that type of thing. Again, Mo Dabo is probably the best example of that. I don't think that Mertz, Griffin, even Canardo's a great two-way player, or that type of player. And I think maybe that's one element missing. But that was just my one thought.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with your observation that was supposed to be Tony Walls' role this year, and for whatever reason, family reasons, and then I think he suffered an injury here late in the year, or at least if his social media can be trusted, that happened this past week. So he just never got into the fold, and if this were a 34-game season, he probably would have, right? But he would have had the whole second half essentially to get it going and find his role, but it didn't work out that way. So I think in some aspects, the Hounds did the best they could. What do you think about goalkeeping, John? Because I mentioned the soft goal given up by Vitiello, but I think that was the first one that I would question of all the ones he's given up this year. Of course, he only gave up, I think, 4 in 8 matches coming in, so it wasn't a lot to choose from. But he wins the Golden Glove. It's more of a team award, I know. But I was impressed by Vitiello. I think that the Hounds might have something for the future there in him, and realizing that Pittsburgh has gone through keepers in the Bob Lilly era. It was Dan Lind the first year, had some concussion issues, decided to retire. Unfortunately for him, Kyle Morton, great last year, moved on to St. Louis, which is moving on itself, by the way. They'll play Louisville next week in the East semis. And now this year with Vitiello usurping the title of starting keeper from Tomas Gomez, which we thought was going to belong to him coming in. So I wonder if both will come back. I think that the Hounds might have somebody in Vitiello. He showed a really good knack for shot stopping. And I think overall was in pretty good command in the box, too, when it came to crosses and punches and things like that, directing traffic.
Absolutely. He developed throughout the course. You could see he gained a lot of confidence with the more, playing time. And Bob, showed as a coach and working with his staff that he always rides the hot hand. Typically, he's gone with his main, one main guy and another guy who will play maybe a quarter of the games in the season. But this year it was 8 and 8, and he went with the hot hand at the end. And I agree. I think Vitiello was solid, and even proved his worth in the first half, as we talked about. Came up with some of those big saves that kept the Hounds in it, kept it as a 1-0 game. And it just lots of credit to the young guy from Massapequa, New York. And I think that he's someone that, again, but the question is, Bob does this every year, will he bring his keepers back into the fold? And it'll just be interesting to see. Can they, I don't even know what terms of salary requirements and whatnot, how that works, but Gomez is obviously a veteran. Then you got a contract option with Vitiello. Maybe you keep that. And there's a lot of decisions like that we don't know about that go on behind the scenes in terms of payroll and things of that nature. So we'll see what happens. I think it would be great they bring him back as kind of the main guy, and then knowing how Lilly works, maybe there's 2 younger guys that are fighting for those last couple spots. But we'll see. But I agree. I think it would be great to bring him back.
All right, John, any final thoughts on the season? I'm going to leave it up to you, our resident soccer grand poobah at Pittsburgh Soccer Now. It's always great talking to you after these matches, even though we haven't been able to connect over the past 2 weeks. But we got a soccer season in. That's my primary takeaway. I didn't think we were going to this year for a while. But and also knowing the USL is a league that functions on gate revenues heavily. And so in a lot of ways, I am surprised that we played, considering the Hounds could barely sell any. They didn't sell any tickets. I think they gave those away to their season ticket holders that showed up, the very limited quantity that were allowed to show up. A shame we didn't get to test the new restrictions from Governor Wolf in the state of Pennsylvania in a home playoff game. Apparently, it would have been 1,000 allowed into Highmark Stadium, but it doesn't come to fruition. But overall, I'm just keeping an attitude of gratitude on this, not to be cliched, but that's the way I feel. And if you're a Hounds fan out there and you feel like you're a little too still injured from this loss, or you feel like it's a missed opportunity. I don't disagree with you, but I suppose COVID-19 and all that's going on in 2020 has put me in a different frame of mind here. It's been great to talk about the Hounds, and they made the playoffs for the third consecutive year, John. They'd never done that in their franchise history, so I still see the arrow on this franchise ticking up. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, lots and lots of building blocks for sure. You have, again, I talked about the young midfielders, and Robbie Mertz will be going into his third year as Riverhound, the hometown guy. Just there's a lot of building blocks, and there's a lot of momentum, a lot of positive things. Bob was talking about Louisville City's success in the past 5 or 6 years. He also talked about Pittsburgh's success in terms of where they've come, and now the Coriopolis facility. I believe will it be? I don't know if there's been any holdups with COVID, but that seeing that maybe happen next year, or the end of next year, or when that's just an exciting thing. There's just a lot of exciting things that are going on with this franchise. This was a very kind of such a strange season for us, for them to come out of it. They could have had a great pathway. It didn't quite work out that way, but if they had, maybe the schedule worked itself out, or I'm saying if they somehow beat Hartford, or even got that tie against Hartford and pulled out and had the home match tonight, maybe things would have been different. But we see how resilient St. Louis FC is. In this postseason, I always say that in these shorter strike seasons and weird seasons, that the teams with the young legs a lot of times can pull through, and it will be interesting to see how the rest of the USL playoffs play out. But I think the Hounds as an organization are in a very, very good place. I think Bob Lilly has established a tremendous foundation. Tuffy Schallenberger is, he's putting money where his mouth is, and getting this franchise to where it needs to go. So I think this decade is going to be a great decade ahead for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. I think this is something that everyone needs to keep in mind. I think this year is so unique. 2020, if you're a Riverhounds fan, you can close the books on it. We could look towards, I think it's going to be a really great decade of soccer in Pittsburgh. Just look at what's happened in the past 3 or 4 years. We've got the second ranked, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but we've got the second ranked NCAA soccer program. We've got a women's soccer program that's on the rise at Pitt's, both are Pitt's programs. And, soccer in Western Pennsylvania, in the time that I've been putting a lot more time and effort into this, the standard has just risen to such a level. We have some outstanding coaches in this area, quality players that are playing at higher levels. And I think the Riverhounds are leading the way in that. And I think there's so much positive momentum. So, hey, it's not over for me. It's going to be a crazy rush in terms of the high school soccer season. I think what's going to be really exciting about Pitt is they're going to establish themselves in this fall season. And then we have something to look forward to. We have a spring ACC soccer season to look forward to. NCAA, I'm sure they're going to looking really good already, that they'll probably be an NCAA team. So I guess I'm just trying to toot the fact that Pittsburgh soccer is in very good place, and with the Riverhounds are kind of leading the way. And I think that there's a lot of optimism for sure.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, my friend. I agree with you on all accounts. I forgot about the split season in college soccer, so we'll look forward to more excellence from Pitt on both sides there. They've been fun to watch. We continue our high school coverage, including our featured games of the week on Pittsburgh Soccer now. And really, the offseason of the USL Championship is short. We hope it feels even shorter this year, because we had almost 2 off seasons with the COVID delay and everything. Anyway, thank you so much for watching our Pittsburgh Postgames this year. We'll have some more video content on the Hounds, maybe a little off-season, either primer or wrap-up at some point. I think we'd like to do that in some form or fashion. That would be great as we start angling toward 2021. And as John says, a new decade in Pittsburgh soccer ready to dawn here. So, John, thank you. And, thanks for staying up late and waiting for me to get done with the call with Bob Lilly. I'll have a story on Bob and his thoughts on the match and the season and his long view in just a little bit on the website too. But John, salutations, and I'll see you soon. I'll see you around the various fields and stadiums of Western PA.
All right, Matt. Thanks for all you do, and have a good night.
You too, John, and you too out there. This has been Matt Gajtka with John Krysinsky, our final edition of Riverhounds Pittsburgh Postgame for the year 2020. Thanks again. We'll talk to you next time, whenever that is.